All right, let's get to some of the news. Ben Johnson has been announced as the head coach of the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, who's been coveted over the last 2 coaching cycles in particular, done a fantastic job in Detroit. Ben Johnson stays in the division, goes to the Chicago Bears. Your thoughts?
It's a great get for the Bears, right? Kind of a coup. Ben Johnson had been fairly picky over the last few years, turning down head coaching jobs, withdrawing himself from consideration for a couple of years now, trying to find the right gig, and somehow Chicago has convinced him that they're the gig. Apparently it was down to Chicago and Las Vegas, the Raiders, presumably due to the influence of Tom Brady more than almost anything else.
Or as someone else suggested, perhaps money.
No, because that, I think, is what the tiebreaker was. Because otherwise, it's Brady, it's clean slate, it's, hey, this is if Tom Brady has convinced you that the Raiders are a viable gig in the first place, they're a better viable gig than the Bears, right? Other than the fact that they don't have a quarterback. But, if you buy that the Raiders are a viable option at all, right, you're like, well, okay, then there's a clean slate. I trust the ownership. I trust the model. I'm in, right? So the only way the Bears get you back from there is, how about some extra money?
Maybe.
So if it was a money concern, I think that's why he's in Chicago.
The QB could be the tiebreaker there.
But that hasn't. He's turned down previous gigs where there's a QB.
We'll talk about
unless he completely loves Caleb Williams.
We'll talk about it in a minute because more people are turning down the Jacks, as Ben Johnson did.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about, they've got the quarterback. That has to be appealing, and I'm sure it is. But ultimately, it's the work environment. It's the structure.
But
I think that's probably where and by the way, I don't know if all the reports on Brady, are they all true? Like he's the guy leading this head coaching search, or are people just assuming this?
Balky?
Brady in the Raiders, right?
No, I think it was very widely reported that he specifically convinced Ben Johnson.
So there's got to be something about the structure and stability that's attracting people, because the Raiders' job as far as talent and quarterback situation isn't very
that's
attractive.
What I'm saying. So if the Raiders were a finalist, it's because Brady has successfully convinced him that the environment is good and the structure and all those things. Otherwise, it's a terrible job because they have no talent, no quarterback, no necessarily good prospect of getting one given where they are, et cetera. So you wouldn't touch that job with a 10-foot barge pole if it wasn't for Brady convincing you, no, it's cool. Trust me, I'm involved now. The organization is better. It's a good place to be. So if they're a finalist, it means you've bought into that stuff, which means either he absolutely loves Caleb Williams, which is possible, or the Bears have offered more money because from an organizational structure, the Bears have more red flags, I think, at this point than that vision of the Raiders. The other point, though, I think is worth making is we tend to treat this discussion as a binary, do you have the quarterback, quote unquote, yes or no, right? But it's also what does he think? Right now, Caleb Williams a year ago was the number 1 overall pick and a guy everyone thought was special, right? A year removed from that, we're like, well, Jaden Daniels is probably better. But that doesn't mean that, if Ben Johnson saw Caleb Williams twice this year, maybe Ben Johnson loves Caleb Williams and thinks the special thing is still on the table. I can fix everything that happened last year, and if we get his high end, we have a guy that absolutely rivals Jaden Daniels, or maybe even is still better potential-wise. He might love. So you look at that and you say, well, Trevor Lawrence versus Caleb Williams, right? Theoretically, either one has the quarterback. Ben Johnson might think one of those guys is limited with a ceiling. I can't get much more out of him than has already been gotten. He might look at the other guy and go, that guy's ceiling is through the roof. I loved him a year ago. I can make him into the next Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, all that kind of stuff. If he thinks that, then it's a way more attractive job than Jacksonville.
I am interested to see what that looks like, right? And a lot of times we just look at what the offensive coordinator just did and assume he's going to go do it in the new place. That's also going to be a big-time challenge, right? Because the offensive coordinator's job, to me, there's one of 2 ways to approach this thing. I was talking to our friend Matt Collar on his show yesterday, kind of answered it the same way. One, you have a Kyle Shanahan who doesn't really adjust his scheme a ton, but for the most part says, I need a quarterback who's going to fit what I do. And I don't think Trey Lance was ever going to fit what he did, but Brock Purdy does, right? And Kyle Shanahan has a history of getting the most out of Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, et cetera. Matt Schaub back in the day, what have you. Does he adjust his scheme a little bit? Yes, but there's a little bit of I need these traits to make this thing work with Shanahan. Other offensive coordinators can do anything, right? And Andy Reid historically has made it work with Donovan McNabb and Alex Smith and Brett Favre and Patrick Mahomes, right? All different style quarterbacks, all different strengths and weaknesses, all different looking. Michael Vick, too. All different types of offenses, right? But the core is Andy Reid. Which one is Ben Johnson? Because to me, it looks like he's pretty flexible. He runs every type of run concept, right? They're not just outside zone, power, gap scheme. They run it all. They're obviously creative. He's obviously creative with the trickeration. They attack every blade of grass, so to speak, as they say, for offenses. But they've also had this incredible team that they've built, right? They've had one of the best offensive lines in the league. They've had explosive playmakers at every position. How does Ben Johnson adjust to Caleb Williams? Because every week, right, when you're watching Caleb Williams play, it felt like, all right, this week he just really wants to win from the pocket, and he's sitting there and he's not reading it out well. Other times it was like, hey, go play free. Minnesota game that was in Chicago, 5 big-time throws where it's just like college Caleb Williams playing free. How does Ben Johnson get that balance out of Caleb Williams?
Yeah, and then I think the other thing is how much work can they do in one offseason to rebuild an offensive line? Because that was the issue. Not the issue. That was an issue last season. It was something they weren't able to at least turn into an advantage with the way Caleb Williams plays. Maybe Ben Johnson can mitigate it to some degree, but I think, look, as well as he's done in Detroit, you have to at least acknowledge this is working. It's like the Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia thing, right? Yeah, Saquon looks amazing behind that offensive line in that system, but we've already seen what happens if you take him out of that one and put him on a crappy team. It looks like the Giants Saquon Barkley, right? Now we're doing that with Ben Johnson. He's able to make this offense look phenomenal when he has a to degree proven commodity in Jared Goff, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, Thunder and Lightning in the backfield, Sonic and Knuckles, Amon-Ra, St.Brown, Sam Laporta, blah, blah, endless, right? What happens if we take that and we put him in an offense that we know at least has a problem on the offensive line, might have a problem at quarterback, given that he's not as proven in terms of NFL quality as Jared Goff yet, and the receivers are still a little bit up in the air. Does it work the same, right? So very minimum, let's start trying to rebuild that line pretty quickly.
All right, so Ben Johnson to the Bears. We'll have more this offseason as we talk Bears and building that team back up.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.